Welcome to episode number 84 of Killer POV.
16 to 100.
I'm Rob G from Icons of Fright, PeerNet, and Fangoria a lot this freaking month.
We're picking you up all types of places.
I know.
Yeah, but you guys can't do that because then it will be like I'm from Fangoria and she's from Fangoria, and they'll just get dull.
One of these things is not like the other.
We've all lived in New York at some point.
Yes.
We have that in common.
Is that true?
I don't think you've technically lived.
I lived there for like 4 years when I was a kid.
You were gestated in New York.
Yeah, but no, we all lived there. That counts.
We have all lived there.
Okay.
All right. New York native.
Who
Elric Kane.
Wait, who was born in New York here on this table?
I was.
So was
I. But not
Bekah.
No.
You're the least New York of us.
I am.
So from New York, Elric Kane, and our other co-host not from New York, Rebekah
I
McKendry.
lived in New York for a decade, guys.
Doesn't count.
Doesn't count.
Unless you were
It really
born
doesn't,
there.
Bekah.
Oh, come on.
As a Brooklyn native.
You're not New Yorker high five right here.
Brooklyn high five.
We're New
No, you're-
Yorkers.
I lived there longer than Elric.
Yeah, well,
All right,
tell it to my grandma.
Let's not talking about a place I hate. Let's go back to
We just got our first negative iTunes.
I think I'm going back in February for Toy Fair. I'm kind of
know.
psyched.
Good
It's going to be
luck.
really freaking cold. I'm going to be like peeling my contact lenses out of my eyes. It's
I
going to
love
be
that
bad.
people and our listeners from New York.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Just the
true.
physical place is a lot.
Well, we're in a rain
to ask
apocalypse
for.
out here in LA.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Feels great.
I totally
Are you
agree.
kidding me?
Except for driving in it. Everything about it except driving.
I hate the rain. It's like it's rained here solid for I think we're on our 4th day now. I feel like I'm going to mold.
But it hasn't
like
rained
everything
since like
is damp.
February. We
Yeah,
need
it's-
it occasionally. We need it.
Oh yeah, actually,
Okay.
my mom pointed out yesterday that it hadn't rained since she was here last March, and she was like, "You haven't had a single bit of rain." And I was like, "Okay, you're right. You know what? This is like our twice a year."
And as De
thing.
Niro would say, we need it to wash the scum away off the streets.
Man, I was trying to think of a rain horror connection, but
It doesn't
I
always
Blade
have
Runner
to
is the
rain.
easiest. I mean, it's not
But that's
horror,
sci-fi.
but it's the ultimate LA rain movie. You know?
Okay.
But you
Fair
got that horrible line from The Crow that it
Can't
doesn't
rain-
it can't rain all the time.
That's not a horrible line.
No, it was
It's a
beautiful.
beautiful thing written
It
by
was-
our friend David Scow.
I know it was beautiful when I was 12, and now
Yeah, the
whenever I
covers.
say
And now
it,
it's still beautiful.
but when I used it at trivia a couple nights ago, everybody made fun of me, and I was like, "What?" And
They
Ryan
all-
was like,
everyone that goes to horror trivia at one point has dressed as the Crow for
Right.
Halloween. So F all those people.
Yeah.
Seriously,
Myself included.
If someone had said that to me when I was like in 12th grade, I would have swooned right there. It's like reading liner notes off like Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness. I just would have lost it right there.
Wow.
Yeah,
Smashing Pumpkins?
can't learn all the
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's get on track here. What the hell's going
Wait,
on?
I thought this was our new show.
No.
I thought we were talking about
New
New York
format.
music. Wait, what's going on? You want to talk about horror? Come
Yeah,
on.
let's talk
I
about the
kind of
horror.
missed you guys for like the past 2 weeks.
Well,
so,
somebody
'cause
somebody didn't bother to show last week, but that's
I had really important stuff to do.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
But
But,
the
Don't
show
think
is good.
Ty didn't notice.
I like Ty. He's like
Ty
hardcore.
noticed.
Actually, I don't know if he did.
he might actually replace you.
Yeah.
Oh, come on,
No, that's
Ty.
not true.
Yeah, it would be
That's
David
not
Scow.
true.
Everyone knows it would
David
be
Scow.
Scow.
It would be
David
No one
Scow.
would replace you, but would be our fourth host.
Dave Scow's
I think
pretty
he's
great.
the good fourth host.
Yeah.
I like him. He can come on anytime. David, you can come on anytime.
Yeah, but we had Thanksgiving. A lot of stuff happened, and I bet we watched some movies.
A lot.
Mm-hmm.
Who wants to go first? I don't have a lot.
I will because
I think I have
mine's
4.
kind of epic. I actually don't
Epic?
have a lot. Yeah.
Okay, go for it.
So I'll lead up to it. So I spent most of my break catching up on TV shows. Like I caught up on Sons of Anarchy and The Blacklist and things like that that aren't
not
necessarily horror. But I caught up on Bones, which I don't consider Bones to be horror, but I will mention it because I love that it's like
Snoop
pushing.
Dogg?
Yeah, Snoop Dogg.
That's a great movie, man. I don't care what anyone says. Ernest Dickerson.
It's
Oh, yeah, he's
pushing Bones, the not so great TV show. Honestly, I can kind of take the TV show in small doses, but I love it because they really push the gory quotient on TV.
Mm-hmm.
Like my mom will call me up and be like, "Did you see that corpse on Bones last night? It was all mangled." And I love that they're doing that because it does always have these like uber gory openings. So I thought
Becca's
I'd
got a
mention that.
Borean's boner.
A what?
I can't believe I got that out. Becca's got a Borean's boner. Isn't that his name? David Boreanaz? Boreanaz?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you know what?
Angel.
I was
Angel,
never
yeah.
into him. Even in Angel, I was much more like, what was the bad guy on
You're
Buffy?
into Charisma Carpenter. Me too.
Oh yeah.
She turned up in Sons
Honestly,
of Anarchy last night.
I would have gone
Very
Willow
strange.
if I was going to go anywhere in
Okay,
that
fair
show.
enough, fair enough.
But no, I liked Spike, if anybody. So
And if any horror fans are still listening,
Yeah.
the first 6 minutes of our show that has not touched on it. Okay.
Yeah.
So I did watch, and this is kind of a weird rewatch for me. I watched Pandemonium from 1982, which is a horror comedy. It's directed by Alfred Soul, the guy who did Alice, Sweet Alice. And it popped up on one of my recommendations. It may have been like Amazon or something, where it's like, if you like blank, you'll like blank. And it's like, if you like Student Bodies and a couple of the other horror, like Saturday the 14th Strikes Back, you will like Pandemonium. So I rewatched Pandemonium. And I remember loving that movie as a kid, and I have no idea why. It's kind of just, it's all over the place, but it's a star-studded all over the place. So it's kind of interesting. Like, I want to do like a social study on it. I don't even know, but you guys.
Who's in it?
Judd Nelson, or Judd Reinhardt. Sorry, Judge Reinhardt. Judge Reinhold. Thank you. And Carole King. And it's really kind of like the Saturday Night Live crew from 1982 all appears in this movie. And so, yeah, it's just a lot of like stars, and there's all these cameos, and it's supposed to be like a slasher rip, kind of like Student Bodies and Saturday the 14th, where it's like a slasher parody. But
I've never heard of that one. That's
I don't know.
It's kind of hard to find. I don't know if it ever got released to DVD. I stumbled on a VHS copy of it. And yeah, so I need somebody. You guys should
really see it, but you can only see it at Bekah's house. That's where all the nerds go.
It's that rare. But I need somebody else to watch it so I can discuss it with somebody, because every other person that I've been with, hey, I watched Pandemonium. No one has seen it. So I need one of you guys to watch it just so I can discuss it. Okay. My daughter has really gotten into Mystery Inc. And so I've been watching a ton of that. It is the new Scooby Doo TV show.
Oh, yeah, somebody recommended that.
It is so good. Oh my gosh, it's hilarious. It is absolutely hilarious. And it is so self-aware of all of the old shows and everything that happened. And there's a character called Hot Dog Water because she smells like hot dog water. It makes me giggle the entire time.
Is that on Netflix Instant now?
It is. The whole series is. And it's things like there's one about Cthulhu.
I've heard that. I've heard they use modern monsters.
Yeah, there's like a Hellraiser reference. There's a Suspiria one. It's just kind of crazy in that regard.
Yeah, my roommate's been watching it and saying that there's all sorts of weird horror references that I would get. So I was like, oh, cool.
And they make it like Velma and Shaggy actually hook up, and Fred and Daphne hook up, but it's hilarious because it's kind of this awkward 1950s teen thing, but it's set in a modern day.
I did not think Velma swung that way.
Velma did.
I did not.
She went for Shaggy.
Really? I did not think she would.
Really?
I thought Velma was more of Daphne's type.
But
then she got
Velma.
Really?
Little nerdy girl.
Yeah. I think Velma was much cuter than Daphne, but that was just me.
Wasn't Daphne a redhead?
Daphne was a redhead.
So how are you hating on redheads?
Because I liked Velma. She was like the computer geek. I liked her.
Yeah.
And then the big news. So there should be a drum roll for this one just because everyone always gives me crap about it. I watched Phantasm, kids.
But as cool as that should be, here's my problem with you watching it.
What?
We're waiting for a good version of it so we could all watch like on Blu-ray or cinema.
She couldn't wait.
She watched on VHS. She watched it on YouTube, everyone.
YouTube? Really?
I'm just assuming. I am just taking liberties.
Actually, I watched the Blu-ray. It was in the lovely the Ball collector set. It was Dave Parker's.
It's the UK Anchor Bay DVD set.
That's the one.
There is no Blu-ray as of right now.
Of the first.
Of the first one. Yeah. There is of the second. And so I'm watching one a week for the next 4 weeks because the reason that I had to go ahead and watch it and couldn't wait until your ideal theatrical screening, Elric, was that we're getting ready to start coverage for part 5 because Coscarelli's working on part 5. So in order to keep up with everything I have to do.
Does that mean he'll be here,
I have to
Bekah?
catch
Make it happen.
Hey.
I'll see what strings I can pull. But
Rob's already done the hard work. He did the massaging when he did the panel.
Lots of massaging.
He's one of our dream guests. Yeah. Everyone knows it.
Yeah. So
I want to ask him about those creatures in Beastmaster that hold you and then you just become bones. You know, those things with the scales.
I was talking with somebody about a couple days ago about how I absolutely love Beastmaster and Deathstalker, which was kind of like the weird.
I remember Deathstalker, but I remember
I fucking love Deathstalker.
It was like the Corman ripoff
it was like the Corman ripoff
Deathstalker
version.
One of them's by Warnowski.
It was the second one is,
Jack
but they're
Hill
gorier.
Maybe the first one.
They're a lot gorier than Beastmaster. Beastmaster.
Mark Singer from V. I remember. I love V.
Yeah.
But I always loved those movies. Whoever I was discussing them with wasn't as big of a fan. But
so what do you think of Phantasm?
You know what?
Let's change topics.
I'm all over the place today, guys. I loved it because it was nightmare logic. Honestly, I went in expecting kind of a linear movie, and I'd seen so many clips from Phantasm that I was really curious about how everything was going to work together because all I knew was like some tall guy in a mausoleum who's also an alien, and then there's this weird ball, and then the little dudes that look like Jawas.
Yeah.
And I was like, how is all this going to fit together? And it didn't. And they never explained jack shit, and they didn't have to.
That's why it's awesome. Yeah.
And that was kind of kick-ass. I liked that angle because the whole time I'm like, when is all this going to tie together? And then it just ended. And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. It was like complete and total nightmare logic. Like you could just throw batshit crazy cool imagery together and somehow make a movie out of it. And I don't think many people could do that successfully because I think that unless you are like Argento does that a lot of the time. And like in Suspiria, he just shoves cool imagery together and somehow it creates a movie and it works and it's successful and your mind can follow it. But I don't think a lot of people can do that.
I always think as long as the creator knows what it means, like as long as he understands, oh, this is the dream here and this is that, then usually we can follow it, even if we don't get it. But if the person's full of shit, they're just like, oh, that's cool. It usually doesn't translate, you know. And I can't wait to see it again.
I'm watching one every weekend for the next 3 weeks to get through 2, 3, and 4. And I've heard that whereas one sets itself up as nightmare logic and you don't know what's actually happening and what's not and what's real and what's not because there's no connections made. I've heard that 2 kind of makes it into a more linear story and tries to explain it. Yeah. But then again, like Dave Parker, who I'd watched the first one with, you know, I think like 2 is one of his favorites. So I'm anxious to see how it is because I've heard it seems to be very polarizing, the second one. So
I remember 2 a little bit liking it, but not loving it. I need to see that again too. It's interesting.
It's almost like 2's where the movie starts because I mean, it picks up right at the end of 1. And, you know, I mean, it's kind of a spoiler, but what happens at the ending is so isolated from what you've just seen before. So it almost feels like, okay, you saw that. Now here's the real story, you know? So that's the weird thing. Like it is a continuation, but all the things that make the original great, the nightmare logic, trying to make heads or tails of it, it almost demystifies that by going in a different direction, you know, and some people like that and some people don't. I actually would like to revisit the 4th one, which I haven't in a while, because 4, it's not... I mean, and nobody has, you know, said, oh, I love Phantasm 4. It's great. It's pretty panned for the most part, but he shot so much footage for part 1 because he shot it over a long period of time. I think it was a couple of years as a kid trying to make this movie work. That half of Phantasm 4 is his unused footage from part 1.
Oh, wow.
That's fun.
You know, so there's all this weird stuff where you'll see Michael Baldwin as an adult and then it cuts to footage, 35 millimeter footage of him as a kid because it's stuff that got cut out of Phantasm. Like he can, so, and I think that's the problem a lot of people have with the 4th one is that he didn't make a real narrative feature. He just took what he had, shot new stuff, and tried to make them into something new.
So it's the Boyhood of Phantasm movies.
Kind of.
It's like his epic spanning.
Maybe it's like Psycho 4, where it's like a flashback within the reality.
If Anthony Perkins had footage from that's new actors doing the back. Like this is it cuts to old footage of the original actors. You know, whatever.
That's cool.
10 years earlier.
I'm intrigued.
You know, yeah, it's interesting.
Okay. I will say I fucking love the soundtrack. That I thought was awesome.
I'll watch them all just before the new one. Do we know when the new one's coming?
No, but I think early next year is the plan, and I would imagine because Coscarelli owns the rights to all of them except 2, which is Universal, and now Scream Factory has that one. So if I had to guess, I think they're waiting to finish 5, and then maybe he'll make some sort of arrangement or deal to release them all.
But he owns the rights if he wanted to remake it.
Yeah,
he owns
there
the
was
remake.
a period he was going to remake it like as 3 movies, like a new trilogy, you know, like a whole big budget thing, but that fell apart.
Yeah. So I absolutely loved
glad you liked it.
Yeah.
I didn't think you wouldn't. I think it's too interesting. And
it was really fast. I can't say that it was like scary because I mean, I talked to people who were like, oh, it's the scariest movie I've ever seen. And I think had I seen it when I was a kid, it would have scared the shit out of me. Like those little Jawa dudes would have scared the bejesus out of me.
And I think just even his voice, the tall man's voice before, because you already know him before seeing the movie as a convention guy.
Because I was like, he looks so young and spry in it. And I think that if I'd seen it as a kid, I would have viewed him in the same light that I did like the preacher from Poltergeist, where he's like old and creepy and just a little too tall for comfortableness. And so, but when I was watching it, I was like, oh, look, Angus Scrimm is so young and look at him getting around.
Yeah, nothing's probably worse to be scared of a movie than if you've already seen the person like on convention circuits, but have not seen the movie. And then you see and you're like, oh, it's that guy I saw last week. You know, it takes the mystery out of.
He used to host Fangoria promos for us. My first year with the company, we taped a whole bunch because he is so sweet and he wouldn't cuss. So we wanted one for where he was just going to rip somebody's Fangoria away and say, give me my fucking Fangoria, and he wouldn't curse. So he kept, give me my farting Fangoria, and we kept changing it around so that we could try to make it sweet for him.
It'd be fun to watch.
He's awesome.
Cool.
I guess the most prominent thing I saw this week, I saw a bunch of things with some with you, but the most prominent thing is the Lord of Illusion's director's cut, which Scream Factory just put out on Blu-ray. And you know what? I thought I'd seen this movie, but I didn't.
This is
I've
not
never seen
the
it.
theatrical? I've only seen the theatrical.
Well, that was the fun surprise. I knew that Scream was putting out Lord of Illusions. It has the theatrical cut in there, but then it says director's cut on the other disc. So I was like, oh, well, I loved the Nightbreed director's cut, obviously. So let me put this on. And there's a little note from Clive at the beginning saying that this was one of those things where he really had a lot more, he wanted it to be more like a noir, you know, and he had a lot more character stuff in there. But of course the studio didn't understand it and they made him cut it down, you know, to get an R rating and all that. And he said, I will do this if you release my director's cut, which apparently they never did. So this is actually his version of the movie finally, which I think is neat that now all of a sudden, all these years later, Clive's kind of getting a chance to go back and finish his movies. But yeah, I was completely unfamiliar with it. I mean, I just vaguely remember it because, you know, this is early 90s. Scott Bakula is the lead of it. And Famke Janssen, super young in it. But it's, you know, it's interesting. He's kind of like this detective in New York, private detective that gets hired for weird cases and stuff like that. And there's this whole... He gets called out to L.A. Because it's like this like magician. There was
League of Magicians.
It's like I wish I remembered the distinction. They were saying there's an illusionist. An illusionist is somebody that does it and it's fake for, you know, whatever. And then there's a magician who those people do it for real. Like those are the people that are conjuring up things that they shouldn't be. To do stuff. So one of the most famous ones gets killed while he's out in L.A. And then all of a sudden he's kind of in the middle of trying to figure out, was it another illusionist or magician, all that. It's really interesting. And again, it's like very unique to Clive's style of storytelling. And I don't know, he's always, now that I've seen his version of Nightbreed and Hellraiser and now this, it's kind of interesting evaluating his work 20 years later as a director, because it actually is a very unique style and interesting. So I strongly recommend it. I thought it was really cool. And I'm surprised Scott Bakula is not more of a... I mean, I always loved him in TV, but he's a great leading man. Yeah. I always
thought Lord of Illusion was the one that most kind of had... Clive's brain in it, I guess, was it? Like, because I mean, it seems more fetishistic. It seems more homoerotic.
Very much so.
Like, if I remember correctly, the opening scene is literally like a half naked dude in like cutoffs sitting in the sweltering sun. And it's like a crotch shot, if I remember correctly. And I mean, it felt so much more sexualized.
Yes.
In Clive's sense. So I always considered that. And even like the magic and the mystery angle, it seemed to be much more. I look at that film and see more Clive than any other thing he's done.
I'm just a big fan of that film in general, but I have not seen necessarily that version of it. But it's the same with Nightbreed though. I liked that movie as well. I'd like to see what both directors' cuts, see if I can even tell the difference. You know, I also like the score of Lord of the Illusions a lot. I think the same guy who did I can't believe his brain escaped me, is an Undecided Horror, but he did Demons 2. And a bunch of other interesting stuff. British Simon
Boswell.
I can't believe I would forget. He did some of Phenomena and Santa Sangre by Joe Dante. I think Damnation Game is where that character comes from, the book, and I love that. I think there's a whole series that character would be the best for television.
Yeah, now would be a good time.
Yeah, if they could.
With the Scarlet Gospels coming out, which is Clive's new book, he's been working on it for years, where that character goes against Pinhead. And it'd be complicated rights-wise to get Pinhead back, but he definitely seems like the ideal for a television show.
And that cult scene where they're all melting into the, sinking into the sand. It's
right.
a great horror scene.
Gorgeous.
And that actor is so good. The guy who plays the lead, the magician who's kind of come back from the dead. It's kind of frightening. Those parts really work on the horror level, but it's cool. I think the thing about Clive Barker, compared to, say, Stephen King and other people, is that he transcends just horror. Like, in one movie, he's doing like 3 other things. Noir, horror, mystery, and because of that, they're hard to pigeonhole, harder to sell.
They are.
They're more complicated.
Well, especially Clive also, and I can't do this with any of his movies, they never have a subgenre. It's never like, oh, it's a slasher, or, oh, it's a creature feature, oh, it's a aquatic horror. If you asked me to classify what Lord of Illusion is, what, any of his films are. Hellraiser, I mean, you can call Rawhead Rex like a creature on the loose, but I mean, that's where
he didn't have much to do with Rawhead in the end, though, right? As a film.
He's kind of disowned it anyway.
I've only seen bits of it.
But most of his films, if you ask like for a subgenre, it's not. It's a Clive Barker film that doesn't have a subgenre.
Right. Really quick in terms of, since, we were just talking about TV, I want to strongly recommend Constantine. I'm really loving that show. It's, it's based on the DC comic book Hellblazer. It is nothing like the Keanu Reeves movie because that's not what the character is supposed to be. But I think it's a neat little, it's got that nuance. Like, it's almost like that character that we just talked about in Lord of Illusions. Like, he kind of already is in Constantine, where he's kind of facing different demons that have escaped hell every week. And, look, Supernatural is a great show. I don't know how much longer it could possibly go on at this point.
The 200th episode was amazing.
And what are they up to now, though?
I think they're on like 2 or 3 now, but the 200th episode was on, I want to say 3 weeks ago. It was amazing.
Okay, it's recently.
It was wonderful.
But I mean, I think if fans give this a chance, it's both comic book fans, because now they're starting to introduce other characters from the dark side of the DC universe.
Cool.
Like we've already met the guy that's going to be the Spectra.
Oh,
and
cool.
I mean, that means maybe Swamp Thing will show. Like there's a lot of interesting characters.
Didn't he also have Man Thing or something? Wasn't there another one?
Man Thing is the Marvel one. Swamp
Marvel,
Thing is the DC one.
Yeah, I remember.
Black Manta. I love Black Manta. He's coming back someday.
It's the reason I mention is because it's they're doing 13 episodes. They've already committed to that, and now it's kind of on hold. So this is kind of the show that kind of needs to be saved.
I've got them DVD. I watched the first one and thought like Neil did a great job directing it, but I felt like it moved so quick. I wasn't sure about the character stuff.
And I want to clear the record. So if you're already watching the first one, the pilot is the pilot. However, one of the leads in the pilot was recast, was fired and recast with another actress. So they kind of, by episode 2, and she's not even the same character. They just kind of wrote that character out. So they were kind of
was wise, because she kind of ruined it.
Yeah, she was pretty terrible. But so from episode 2 and on, they start to get their footing, which is, the way any show goes. The weird thing is they just made this announcement that the show's on hold. And I think they just made the biggest misfire ever, which is that Neil directed the first and technically second episode. But the second episode didn't air as the second one. They went right into introduce this new girl character. So now we're on week 6 or 7. Neil's Halloween-themed episode just aired this week. And it's so distracting because they're doing things that you do in a second episode where you overly explain everything again because you're still new to the world.
Oh, weird.
And Neil did a great job directing it, and it's actually scary. It's one of the scary episodes. But it's kind of getting a lot of negative feedback online. And I don't think people realize that it's because it's not meant to be the 7th episode.
So if you've DVR'd it, you should watch it second?
Yes, I think so.
That should be the next thing I watch then.
Yeah.
Okay.
So go to whatever just aired as your second episode. But that aside, give it a chance. It's a really good, good show. I really dig it.
At some point.
And we will, for sure. Elric, anything that you saw?
Yeah. Well, talking about TV, this isn't one I'll even review. I've been wanting to see this since Darren was here and told us about Black Mirror, and I'd almost bought an import DVD many times because I wanted to see it so bad after Darren Bousman explained what the show was, and I didn't. I watched only the first 2 episodes of 6, but it is on Netflix Instant. The first episode is maybe my favorite hour of TV I've ever seen. It's like right up there.
Refresh my brain.
This is Black Mirror. Black Mirror is a British sci-fi Twilight Zone-esque show that started last year in England, and it's basically perfect. Like, I haven't seen all of them yet. They're not related, each story. The second one is beautifully done, like big sci-fi. Felt like a Vincenzo Natali film, but I connected to it less. The first is just great. It's the one where he told us about basically a prime minister in England is told that he basically has a few hours to make love to a pig. Otherwise, the Princess of Wales, who's been abducted, will be killed.
Oh, right.
And how everyone has to deal. And somehow it's tense. It's like kind of shocking. And you watch it and you're just glued. It's absolutely gripping. It's just a perfect hour of television. And it does feel like a modern, it felt like that pretty edgy, but it did feel like it felt the closest to a modern version of Twilight Zone that I've seen. Like, definitely, I have a feeling this is the series. So all 6 of them are on Netflix. I'm going to watch the rest this week. The second one was really good, but I connected to it less, but it was amazingly made. So the production values are great. I think they're in their 2nd season now, maybe more. So it's great. In terms of films, I watched Late Phases. I caught up when I was away.
Yeah, I saw that one too, and I loved it.
I think you talked about it when we talked on Ties. You did mention it
today.
Yeah. I'm 90% sure because that's why I watched it. It's really good. It's one of those films. I had a couple like minor quibbly things with it. It's really fun. I loved seeing the werewolves, and I love Nick D'Amici's performance. The only negatives are just weird things like it fades to black like every couple scenes, and there's something about that kind of, I don't know, takes me out a little. And the biggest thing is there's this emotional story being built between him and his son that I feel like would have taken that movie to the next level if they'd nailed that. I feel like it's kind of maybe it's treated secondary. It's a horror film, so I cut it a wide berth. It's a really fun. I'd recommend it to everyone. It'll definitely be like towards the end of my top 10. It would be top 10. Too. But there's just this little hint of you're like, oh, it's impossible for me to talk about without spoilers. I'll talk to anyone who's seen it if they want to write to me. Yeah. I feel like there's something that could have happened towards the end that would have really like solidified it. But it's, hey, seeing old school practical effects, and there's a couple like
CG.
Yeah, there's a couple shotgun to the head type things where I'm like, yes.
Yeah. In fact, the transformation, because there's a werewolf, so there's going to be a transformation, and I was waiting for it. And when it happened, the way it was shot and executed, like when it was over, like the last moment of it, I was like, yes, that is how it's done.
Yeah, that's the annoying part. And it is Silver Bullet-ish, and it is, obviously people...
Oh, well, Dick Greenert said it's Bubba Hotep meets Silver Bullet, which is perfect.
Which is exactly what it is. It's pretty spot on. Like and Nick's really good in it. I will say this about makeup. My only quibble is his face is made up, so well. He looks older.
I thought he got old.
He got old, but then there's scenes where he's not wearing a shirt, and they haven't done anything to his torso. He looks like it felt like a young person's torso on an old... I mean, but again, these are minor quibbles, and Fessenden's really fun in the role.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
It's just a fun movie. Definitely recommend that. I saw it last night. I watched The Boogens, which I'd never seen.
Boogens.
The Boogens?
Boogens.
I watched The Boogens.
Boogens.
I'd always want to see it on the cover art. I was always curious to see it. All I could tweet was the Babadook was better than Boogens. But it's, what's funny about it? It's not a great movie by any means. I like the setting. It's like a Descent-like setting. They go into these caverns and stuff. But the characters, in the first few minutes, I'm going, I hate these kind of generic characters. And by the end, you really like the characters. It's the best thing about it is the character stuff's actually really likable. They grow on you, and by the end, you're like, oh, these people are really cool. The monsters are really cool when you see them, and it's fun, but it takes, I think it was like an hour 15 before anything actually happens, like before there's actually any death. It's all just it's just POV stuff of the killer. So it's fun. I would recommend it. And the funny thing about this, it was one of those discs on Netflix that you put on your list and it says long wait. It's been at the top of my list for like a year and a half, and then one day it just showed up.
It was just one guy. They only have one Boogens disc, and some guy in like Poughkeepsie has had it for a year.
Just quick ones. I watched Cape Fear again. Just came on TV, and I wasn't planning on watching it. The Scorsese version. I'm very familiar with the Mitchum version, the original version, and it was, I couldn't stop watching it because it's like a crazy batshit Brian De Palma movie. It didn't feel like I kept going, this isn't Scorsese, this is De Palma. Right. It's insane. Like it's a really crazy movie. But the one really fun thing, which I'd totally forgotten, was that Robert Mitchum is in it, and so is Gregory Peck in one scene. So it's like, oh cool, the original guys are in it. It's a fun movie. It's not it's not a great movie, but I thought it was a lot of fun, and De Niro gets to ham it up all the way. I mean, he's a real villain in it. And the last one, which was really interesting to see again, was The Gate. And
I love that film.
You know what? Yeah. The one thing I'll say about it is, it just came on. I DVR'd it off, cable, and hadn't seen it, since I was a kid. And I'll say this: I think it might be the perfect gateway kids horror film, because I was watching it with some distance. I got to admit, like I'm watching it, going, "This is really fun," but I'm not into it right now because I'm too old, But watching, it's batshit. It's like Phantasm. It has all these crazy things happening, crazy creatures.
See, when I was a kid, The Gate scared the shit out of me. When the dead guy comes out of the closet, and when he finds the eye in the hand, oh my god!
He comes out of the wall the first time. That's the scary part.
It bites him.
And that part did get me, actually. That was the one part where, as a adult horror fan, but no, I was just watching it and I'm thinking, like, because also we're gonna have to start making choices what to show our kids at some point with horror, and I wouldn't show it too soon, but I feel like that might be the one where you'd really fall in love, like, wow. Because the protagonist is a real little boy. It's Stephen Dorff as a little kid, not a teen. He's a little... I thought it was a really good movie, and, it's hard
the visual effects, I mean, are pretty untoppable for that period.
Yeah, a little hard to judge now, but no, I really dug it. I know it just came out on Blu-ray, right?
No,
Yes.
it's still on DVD.
Oh, okay.
I thought I had it on Blu-ray.
Nope.
Huh.
For some reason, I thought I saw.
Maybe
okay.
I have a
Interesting.
snazzy
but yeah, it
DVD
wasn't
version.
the best version I saw online, but it was on DVR, but it was cool.
Yeah.
So I would recommend it if somebody's got a like an 8-year-old. It feels like if you're about 8 years old, that would be like
That's probably about when I first saw
Yeah.
it, like
me too.
4th or 5th grade.
because the effects are really strong.
Yeah, it was one of those HBO movies that I remember.
And a lot of sad things happen in it that could be hard to get over, but by the end, it's all kind of nicely resolved.
I'm going to lend you The Gate 2.
Okay, is it good?
It's not quite.
Is it as good as Pumpkinhead 2?
Yep.
Okay, then maybe you should not
There
lend
is
it.
a Gate Blu-ray. Hold on.
No,
'Cause-
there's not. I'm telling you.
What? It's on
because
Blu-ray.com.
I upgrade all my Blu-ray, all my DVDs to Blu-rays.
Oh,
That's
no,
one
wait.
that's not.
Never mind. It's TBA.
Told you.
And before we get I think we need to at least address that question, even if it's just 2 minutes.
No.
Okay.
Save it for next time.
Okay, we'll save it
'Cause
for next time.
we have a legendary actor about to come
Okay.
on.
Yeah,
Don't
yes.
keep him waiting.
Okay.
So we're going to go right to it.
Okay.
All right.
We are back, and joining me is a friend of ours, Elijah Drenner, who's a documentary filmmaker I met a couple years ago when he made American Grindhouse. Hi.
Hello.
How you doing? And joining him,
I was waiting for some sort of musical cue.
There will be played.
That's when I come through the curtain and sit next to the table.
We'll add that
Exactly.
in post.
Okay, good.
And joining him is Lainie and Dick Miller. Welcome to the show.
Howdy.
Yes.
And that guy, Dick Miller, is a film that Elijah recently made. And I bring that before kind of telling you who and what they are, because part of the title is saying almost you've seen him in many movies, and sometimes you don't even know you've seen him in some movies. Genre fans tend to all know, but some of the broader public might not. So tell us a little bit how you guys met and this idea started.
Go.
It's all on you,
Is that my
Elijah.
cue?
How we
Okay.
met is funny. They woke up and said, "This is Elijah." I said, "What does he do?" He's a director, and he's directed your picture, and I didn't know anything about it.
He just showed up here.
I just showed up. They set a place at the table for me, and I showed up. It's a little Jewish joke. I'm sorry, I got let's go to esoteric in here. Sorry, guys.
You can roll with that.
Okay, all right.
But I mean, you do a lot of special feature documentaries and short form stuff, and I'm gonna guess that it started as something like that.
Okay, yeah. The real story. This started off as a DVD bonus feature that was actually pitched to me by a company I work for in Germany, and they said they were doing actually the German DVD release of War of the Satellites, which actually, funny enough, never came out.
Oh wow, weird.
And then, gosh, I haven't really thought about this for a while. So then they said, we want to do this, and this, and how about a piece about Dick Miller? And it was like, well, that's a fantastic idea, but there's no way you could possibly do what you should do for the German DVD release of War of the Satellites and just be stuck with a few clips from that movie. It needs to be a whole movie, but let's have fun with this and just see what we can do. And so then it just kind of got bigger and bigger because they never gave me a deadline because they never came out. And then we just turned to Lainie, really, to kind of theorize and see if we could actually put together doing it into a feature-length standalone documentary, because there was some sort of rights issues with the German cut of the film that wasn't going to happen. So with the blessing of the DVD label that started Subculture Entertainment, who they're one of the producers on the movie, they started the whole thing, and they said, yeah, make it. And that was Tino Zimmerman, it was his idea, and he didn't see it until about a week before it premiered at South by.
Wow.
And he just said it was, go ahead.
So it's one thing to decide you want to make a movie on somebody, but it's another thing to let people into your life. And, how did you decide that, you could trust Elijah, or are you still working that out? We'll decide after the premiere.
He's pretty shady.
But also you like just to expose, the story of your life, because you're an actor who's used to playing roles, not yourself, I assume, right?
It was playing roles is fine. This was put together without my knowing about it.
So like a covert reality.
He claims that about everything.
Okay.
They told me practically it was almost finished. The German producer, bless his soul, they told him that this picture is Dick Miller's career is too big for one little bit. You have to make a whole picture out of it. Is that right?
Yeah, basically, yeah.
And I thought that was kind of nice to hear.
Yeah.
I hadn't realized it, but that was it. The picture was made, but it's all finished. And young Elijah said, we could use you to film a little introduction of it, maybe a day shooting. And 3 years later.
At least you weren't forced to do voiceover, right? And reflect on your own life.
That part's true. We've been at this for 3 years. But I always wanted to do it anyway. So when he came to me, it just shortcut for me what I had wanted to do for Dick. So it worked out.
Well, I wanted to ask, had you either of you seen the documentary Corman's World? Because
yes.
I know he's in that doc, and that guy Dick Miller is a great documentary. I feel like it's a wonderful companion piece to that because you see that, and anytime it talks about some of the work that Roger and Dick did together, I was really fascinated by that stuff and kind of was wishing for more of it.
Yeah.
So then when I heard about Elijah's project, I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. It's going to be like a nice little continuation or a side movie to Corman's World. So, I mean, how did you feel about that film, Corman's World, and then, focusing another documentary on just Dick's career?
Well, it's not really just focused on his career. It's on his career and his life. So it runs different. In a sense, it runs parallel, but it really doesn't.
And there's romance, which, it's a romantic, and I mean romance in the real sense of what romance is, not what people think in the movies as romance. Romance to me is like surviving, a couple who survive together and adapt together and move through life together. And I thought that to me was very romantic, and that elevates the movie than being a extra feature because it had a lot of heart, And for me, Corman's World was a good documentary, but it felt maybe a little bit like a fluff piece because it's all positive and it's there's no negative sides of Roger. Everything's perfect, which anyone would know in business could not be the case because he's still working.
Well, this was nice. This was a romance that lasts so far.
You're still here, both of you.
They're sitting pretty close right
years. And that's a long time. That's longer than my career.
Yeah. Yeah, and it must be hard. I mean, Lainie, dating an actor has never gotten easier for anyone, I imagine, in Hollywood. But for you to survive that long, I mean, there must be periods where it's quieter than others,
Well, the truth of the matter is, Dick has allowed me to have my own career for so many years. And when we started, I was in the business and he was in the business. And I left the business and I went into medicine. I spent 25 years away from that. And then I came back in on the other side of the camera. And just now that we're the age we are and we can afford to take a few chances, we can do a couple of projects together.
And for people who don't know, you were in The Graduate. I know this because I've seen the film.
Truth.
Well,
Dustin definitely saw you in the film. I could tell that.
I think he and I and Catherine are the only ones left standing.
Yeah. Well, Dustin was pretty young, wasn't he? He's 30.
Dustin, 30. Yeah. Well, he's older than me. He's older than me. But and Catherine is probably younger than me. Yeah, she's younger than me.
So, I mean, I guess going way back, how did you, Dick, first time working with Roger, did Roger cast you the first time you worked together, or how did you come together?
Roger and I met in one of the strangest casting auditions, if you want to call it that I've ever heard of. I was a writer. I came from New York, and I was writing comedy, and I was having months of no luck. And a friend of mine, Jonathan Hayes, who's also an actor, was working for Roger at the time. And he said, come on down. I want you to meet Roger Corman. I said, can we do that? He said, oh, yeah. he's sharing an office. And when we went down and found out he was sharing a desk. We got down there, and the conversation went, where are you from? I'm from New York. What do you do? I said, I'm a writer. He said, nah, I don't need writers. I need actors. I said, I'm an actor. And that was it. I swear that's word
great.
for word.
And what was the first one you worked on together?
Yes, sir.
What was the first film?
Apache Woman.
Oh, yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
I was because it was about a week after this meeting that I got a call, and he says, come on down, we'll make it got a part for you. It was an Indian. I didn't speak any English. Yes, I did. I have one line. Good chief, you chief now.
Oh, that's funny.
You still remember
But
it.
that's
That's
the
great.
one. But that's the one you also played a cowboy in the same movie.
Elric's done that too.
Yes.
Like both
That's
sides.
true. Roger said, you want to play cowboy? I said, yeah, sure. Well, another picture coming up soon. He said, no, this picture. And I
love
did.
that economy.
Yeah.
And Elijah, I guess I'm curious, how did you know that there was a full story besides highlighting someone's career, which it could have? I guess when you even told me you were making this, I guess in my mind that's what you were doing, so it didn't make me go, oh wow, because I didn't know the story. Did it take just making the film to find the story, or did you meet them as a couple and just know there was?
Well, I guess I knew it could be the clip show.
Yeah.
You know, you're talking about 60 years worth of movies. You know, you can run the gambit and make the good, satisfying clip show. You can get the other actors and directors involved to talk about these things. So you've got that part covered. But then I really think just sort of, because there was about maybe 8 months or so after we did the first interview, in between kind of noodling on this idea about doing this Kickstarter campaign to create the feature. And we met, I don't know how many times, and talked, I don't know how many times. And even when we went and did the first interview, we saw a lot of Dick's artwork. So I thought there was probably something interesting here. I mean, it's not unlike the Walter Paisley character. So you could maybe do something there. These guys have been together for over 50 years. They're a comic team. So I knew all we had to do was just have the camera on very often. and so you just sort of, we got very lucky, I guess, so that there was enough other material to talk about besides the movie, or besides his movies.
I was really impressed by the fan reaction you got as soon as you announced it, because you did like a small Kickstarter, right? Like a partial one?
No, it was, yeah, it was a small amount, because it was really just to cover what we knew we could just really technically finish it off and to legally get it out there. So.
But the fans just immediately went crazy. And I remember that you got funding really quickly from it because there was so much just like, yes, we want this.
Yeah, there was. And what was really, I think, unique was we were able to, with Dick's blessing, give away a lot of his scripts from his movies.
That's where they went.
First he's heard of it.
Yeah. So, but we kind of, I mean, it's just one of those things where you just sort of start asking questions, and we used a lot of those scripts for the movie. We used a lot of his, had him going through his artwork, and we found like home movies. We just sort of like ask questions. Like I said, where we kind of got lucky, where we can kind of embellish what I thought would be a pretty cool movie that I'd want to see anyway, with a lot of personal stuff. And it was, getting, I knew that, getting Lainie to come in as a producer was essential. You couldn't make it without her. She had to be on our side, and I knew that she would have the investment that she would have as a producer, but also as the wife of our subject. So I think having Lainie come in like that was essential, and we didn't really have any sort of disagreements on what to do or how to do it. Do you remember anything, Lainie?
All of my business should be as good as what we have, because, if we disagree on something, it's small and it's usually rationalized, and it's good. We have the best of both worlds. We've got my business and everything I bring, And we've got his youth and his ambition and his talent. He's really talented. Both
I always think of
There's
ambition when I think of
There's
Elijah.
good looks.
I don't know about that.
I don't know about that.
You fancy him?
It's the red leather vest, isn't it?
But no, and it was just getting our crew together. We kept a small crew, and we all know each other, and we all. I think on average it was no more than 3 people at a time doing interviews. I mean, and it was always very small and very tight knit. So I think that keeping it small was really essential.
To follow up on what Rebekah was saying about the fan reaction to it, I mean, it seems that both filmmakers that have worked with Dick and fans really think extremely highly of him.
Yeah.
One of the things that happens here in Los Angeles that I love, without fail, I go to the New Beverly a lot. Anytime he pops up in a movie, the whole audience starts chanting, like applauding.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
They applauded
fail.
when he showed up in a trailer when I was at the New Beverly.
It's like
was a trailer
you're the
for
star of the New
Cannonball.
Beverly. I remember Terminator was the last movie I saw there.
Yeah.
And when his scene came up, just everyone started applauding, which is
it's
amazing. I mean, is that? Did you know about this?
I didn't. I really. This is brand new.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
If you
But I
pop
remember
up on the
we
big
were-
screen there, everyone starts applauding.
I remember making a pilot some years ago, and when I came out, the audience starts chanting, "Dickie, Dickie, Dickie." I said, "What? Who are they talking about?" I said, "You."
It wasn't Walter. They weren't cheering Walter Paisley. That's funny. I guess we grew up probably mostly with Joe Dante's
Yeah.
films, whereas
Of course.
the generation before, like Joe was growing up with you and Roger's films. How different was it once you started working with Joe, like someone who was obviously super young when he was making those films? Was it just a whole nother energy? And James Cameron soon after?
Joe was in fact, when I first met Joe, he was an actor.
Oh, I didn't even know you acted. Yeah.
He wasn't.
So you're a writer who acted, and Joe was an actor who should have been a director.
It's just he was I guess a director at the time, but he wasn't directing.
Yeah.
And what was that?
Cannonball.
Cannonball. That was it. And he and Alan Arkish agreed to play parts in it. They were thrilled. And I said, "Who was that guy?" And, he was very natural, and that was it.
Huh. And there was an actor at all.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then he cast you for Hollywood Boulevard.
Yeah.
All right.
Which is really one of my favorite of your roles. Like, I think that character is but the movies, the movies all over the place because they're of the way they put that film together. But your role is what keeps that to even maybe be a movie.
It's the best part of the movie.
Yeah, I mean, I watching it, I wondered if you had any agents like him, like if you were basing it on, because I mean, he just seems like the purest typical LA agent,
I never had any agents that got that excited.
All right, and he had good shirts too. You wore great shirts.
They were
Yeah.
probably all yours, weren't they?
Oh, all the clothes were mine.
That's funny.
Practically all my wardrobe for 60 years was mine.
Did Joe tell you which of the films he had seen from Roger's stuff that was the reason he is excited to work with you, or was it just in general?
No, those are things I found out later on, many years later. I just knew that these guys is the director, and he's hiring me. That's fine. And I didn't know they were fans.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird. I mean, because it does seem like your career, especially that period, was coming from fans, like people who worked with Roger, but who were also fans of you.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of those guys, did you have to go on auditions during this period, like when you weren't working with, Joe or James or one of these guys?
Were you like hitting the streets as an actor?
I did. I went to very few auditions. Like I said in the picture, if I got a phone call, I got a job.
Yeah.
I probably could have made more of my career as an actor, but I just kind of was relaxing. I was waiting for the big break to come, and we're waiting for the next party, and that was it. I never went on auditions.
But you were also doing a lot of writing during that time, weren't you?
I was
as well?
still writing. I started selling a little after that. I don't remember what.
Well, you have Which Way to the Front.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Which way? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Which Way to the Front? Jerry Lewis picture.
Huh.
And
There's the Western. There's the with Sue Lyon. What was the name of that one? Four Road Out.
Four Road Out was another Western. It was a nice period. I was writing too and selling.
We can still make that bikini picture.
Oh yeah.
Beach Day.
Dick's got a whole drawer full of unfinished, or I should say, unproduced,
Unsold.
scripts. Yes, unsold. Well, that's the glass half
Anybody
empty
need a
sort of
bikini
approach.
picture? We'll head to you.
I do. I need one. What was it called? What was that beach?
Something about
Oh, Rancho Bikini.
Yeah, Rancho Bikini.
Oh, wow.
Which I can only assume was going to be an AIP beach movie,
Probably.
which I would have loved to have seen.
Mm-hmm.
If we do that, we got to do that one in Austin.
They'll take you.
What is, it's interesting because, what I learned from the doc is that you were primarily a writer and then you kind of fell into the acting thing and you do art. What of those things is like your biggest love? I mean, is writing the thing you love doing the most, or did you eventually grow to love being an actor?
No, writing was just an outlet. I figured that's how you got into the business.
Mm-hmm.
I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, they're not going to hire me. I'm 5 feet tall. I think I'll be a writer. Drawing, artwork. It took me a lot of years. After 50, 60 years of this, I started noticing that whenever I got into a bind or something, I'd wind up grabbing a pencil and starting to draw very intensely. So it was always an outlet for me.
Mm-hmm. Excellent.
Yeah, it's funny. I wonder, everyone, when you see a first film, I think for me, maybe it was The Burbs at a young age, but when I saw you in the film, it wasn't seeing you for the first time. It was like the first time you maybe understood that you had seen this person in so many, like including Terminator and little roles that, as a young person, I'm not really conscious of.
Well,
I wasn't even necessarily conscious of who everyone actors, especially supporting actors, were. But then then you start to look for it in films, and then you start to see real roles, like Bucket of Blood, these like fully fleshed out characters. And were you about to say something?
Oh no, I mean, I think you're right. I mean, there is something, Dick does stick out in these little tiny roles where you see him enough times where you start to realize that the people who are casting him are seeing if I'm paying attention.
You mean like The Terror?
Exactly.
It's
like
not exactly the most organic placement with the accent, right?
Well, the one that I posted it up on Facebook today that I always knew Dick from was his role on Fame. And because I knew you as like song and dance and piano playing. And then much later when I would see you appear in these horror films, I would remember like, that's the guy from Fame when I was a kid. So
I love Fame. I love that
you
series.
were awesome in that show.
Thank you.
I think for me it was Gremlins, and then I was so I was so young. I was so upset that you and your wife's character got mowed down, and kind of a little scarred by that. But then being thrilled that you were still alive for Gremlins too, and I was like, oh, okay, it's all right.
Yes.
So I think that was the one for me.
Yeah. And what's so great too about Dick's career is that he has been a part of so many people's childhoods. Like you were getting ready to say, Elric, but Joe being a fan of him from Roger's movies, and now you've got generations of people who are fans of Joe Dante's who want Dick in their movies as well. And it's an incredible career when you think about it.
Yeah.
And Demon Knight, that was a big one. That was kind of when I was like really aware. That or Burbs, it was definitely one of the two when I was like, it's that guy. He's in everything.
Yeah, well, in Demon Knight again, that was a good role. Like, I mean, it's because sometimes you're popping up, you're getting it's almost like a better version of a cameo. But when you actually get a real role where you get to make a change, I think that's when we realize you're a really good actor. Demon Knight, he's like this lovable character, and then even when he becomes a demon, there's a lovable quality to his character.
I like Demon Knight. It's probably one of my favorites.
It's really fun.
I think the idea of putting on the makeup and playing a head.
Yeah. Well, you didn't get to do that many times, did you? Get to playing like the monster or the creature? No.
Not really,
Yeah.
no. This was the first time, I think, that one of the rare times
That's cool.
that I went for all the makeup and everything. And I loved it.
And it was really, Lainie, maybe you can even explain how Dick got that role. Do you remember the story? Because a lot of people might be interested in knowing a little bit about your film history and how you were related to or how you could kind of.
Well, I had worked on Freddy's Nightmares for 2.5 years with Gil Adler. Mm-hmm. And one of the producers there said, "Oh, if I write a segment for Dick, would he come in and do it?" I said, "Sure, write a segment." So he came to Freddy's Nightmares, and he played a character. I forgot the character's name, but he was guest star that time, and it was a similar character. It
like
really
Uncle
was.
Kind of
Al Kramer.
That's right, Al Kramer.
And the episode is Light at the End of the Tunnel.
Yes.
Wow.
Right.
Had it printed
The
out.
only person who would know that right now. Even the director has no idea.
And that
notes.
actually was the only time that we ever worked together.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, was that. And then I had 2.5 years with Gil. He's really a wonderful guy. And so
And that's was a big step of how he got into Demon Knight, because Gil Adler coming from Freddy's Nightmares to the Tales from the Crypt TV show
but
to the
that's,
movie.
I guess, coupled too with the fact that Ernest says he was a big genre fan.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm sure they rapped like you rap and say, "What do you think of so-and-so?" Oh, that's it. And they came up with
That means Walking Dead needs a Dick Miller cameo.
You're right.
Because I'll tell you one thing about that show, and you can tell me more having worked with Ernest, is every episode of that show that Ernest Dickerson directs is 1,000 times more cinematic than all the other episodes. Mm-hmm. It's like you're watching TV most of the time, good TV, solid, and when Ernest directs one, you're like, wow. Like, you feel this, and it's really actually how I've kind of come to respect him as a director is actually through that, and
through
then
TV.
going back to the movies, because I realize he really elevates it. He understands the language much better than a lot of TV directors, I think. But I don't know how he was in terms of directing actors with when you did Demon Knight. Is he a natural actor as director?
My relationship with directors is kind of it's fairly well known. I don't pay attention to that. I've done shows where I've worked the first week on it and finished my part, and I said, "Who is the director on this?"
That's why they keep coming back with you, I guess.
It makes their job easier.
Uh-huh.
I think I forget who said that. Somebody said it in the picture. He says that the director always lets the actor go in case he's discovered something in the part that the director hasn't. You know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess they
John
just.
Sayles said it.
John Sayles said that. Yeah, that's right.
Oh, yeah. Who wrote The Howling?
Yeah.
And Piranha.
Uh-huh.
And Piranha. Yeah. Do you have any personal? I mean, I know it's so hard because of how big your career is. Any personal experiences that stand out to you in terms of favorite films or favorite people you've worked with, or like in what's been something that stood out for you in your acting career?
It's a silly kind of thing.
Yeah.
The one picture that's probably it never had a script. Nobody does anything. Was The Terror.
Uh-huh.
It was just a hodgepodge put together. It took months before they called us back to finish shooting. They said, we finally got a script on this thing here. I said, well, what picture was that? They said, The Terror. I said, what's that? But
It was my dream to get a Terror poster signed by all the directors.
but anyway, my favorite actor, I think, was Boris Karloff.
Oh, yeah.
I was always amazed by this man's career.
Yeah.
And you only had a couple days to make that film, right? It was a very quick turnaround.
We had 3 days.
I love that.
In case they don't know the history of it, Boris Karloff had worked for Roger Corman on a picture, and they finished. And he was going back to England in 3 days or something. And he says, your contract is good for 3 more days. And they shot this thing with no script. Just a lot of scenes with Boris Karloff walking upstairs and down.
And Jack and a bird. I remember Jack in the water and a bird coming down. And
just a lot of scenes they got. And that was the end of it. And I said, what's happening? He said, I don't know. And they put it away. They put it away for about 3-4 months. And they said, we've finally got a script on it. I said, on what? They said the terror. And that was it. That's how the picture was made.
You got mad on that show, and you shaved off your sideburns. And you had
yeah.
to finish.
What an act of terrorism there.
Yeah. Continuity errors.
We had some fancy makeup stuff. But that was... I think working with Boris Karloff was the biggest thrill.
Well, and that film's also famous because you have a kind of a monologue where you explain the plot of the movie that no one knows.
Yeah, they had to tie it all together. So Jack Nicholson beats me up and then holds me up against the wall, and he says, "What happened?" And I explained the last hour of the picture.
I wonder who wrote that part. Do you know who wrote the actual explanation?
No.
There's a few. Jack Hill was one of the writers, right?
Yeah, there's
a lot of people. Francis Ford Coppola, Jack Hill.
It's funny because
Monty.
they all say
Monty.
they work on it, but they all don't take responsibility for what doesn't make sense.
Yeah. No,
my favorite moment in Corman's world is when Jack says, "I defy you to tell me what the terror is about."
Yes, exactly.
That's really fun.
Elijah, can you talk a little bit about getting people to participate? Because I feel like it wouldn't be that difficult.
No, it wasn't hard at all. I mean, it was kind of when and where, and that was one of the easiest things. I mean, we had a big list, and I would say we got, maybe 90% of that list.
Mm-hmm.
Some people just couldn't be done logistically and time-wise, but we did just about everybody that we kind of wanted to, and it really wasn't hard to find directors or producers or co-stars to want to participate. They were all local, except for a few. We went to New York and did Bill Sadler and Zach Galligan and Dick's brother, Bill. And
My brother Bill.
And that was the only logistical one, but everything else was made here in LA. So
We had some stuff shot up north.
oh, that's right. Yeah, we did have an interview with Chris Wallace that was shot for us
Yeah.
up in Portland,
Washington.
Portland,
or
I think.
Portland, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it wasn't hard.
Were there some people you just couldn't get through to because they're not like a James Cameron who doesn't probably pick up a phone? I assume.
I don't know. I don't think I don't.
Scorsese, we
Yeah,
wanted and we couldn't.
Yeah, he said
nail
he
that.
would, but wouldn't.
And Spielberg wanted to, and there was a conflict
Yeah.
when he could do it.
So it wasn't. There was enough material there, so I wasn't like banking on anyone.
Right.
You get to a certain point where you overshoot and you feel responsible to use everyone.
Yeah, it
and
could have been a mini series.
Right.
So everybody that we interviewed is in it. And everyone, what's nice is, Dick's career is this perfect little 3-act structure with, he comes into the business, starts, and you have this sort of career arc, and then there's a little bit of a struggle where there's a little bit of a dip in his career where we talk a little bit about his, more of his writing career and what he was doing with his art. And then he rebounds in the 70s when all these young guys come up. So when you're thinking about who you want to interview, you know where they're all going to go.
Mm-hmm.
So it was, very important for us to get enough people for Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3. And that was about it.
For both Dick and Lainie, when you watched the film for the first time, because so many people are interviewed, did you learn anything new that you didn't know before about either each other or Dick's working experiences?
I learned that there were a lot of people in town wanting to work with me.
It's just a big promo for you to get more gigs, right?
I learned that people thought we were funny. I never thought of us as a comedy team.
Right.
That's funny.
Yeah, you did.
But maybe that's how come we're able to be together 55 years in
Right.
this business.
Yeah.
Maybe we are a comedy team.
Bless you.
That's definitely it, I'm sure. Elijah, so I want to talk about the series that are playing because this is this show will come on Friday, so there's still time. I just want to specifically talk. It'll start with obviously your film, but then there's some great movies. One I haven't even seen in the series.
So this Friday, December 5th, we're screening this movie at the Egyptian Theater in Hollywood. And a lot of our LA people who we interviewed will all be seeing the film for the first time as well. So they'll all be there. And then this kicks off a whole weekend of Dick Miller movies.
Cool.
Saturday, it's Gremlins 1 and 2, followed by Demon Knight. And then on Sunday, they're doing A Bucket of Blood and War of the Satellites.
Mm.
And is there what's the release? Is there a release plan set for the documentary, or are you kind of just showing it in festivals?
Yeah, I'll let Lainie feel that one.
We have a North American distributor already.
Okay.
And we actually had a distributor in Germany from the get-go because he was one of our partners,
Yep.
was Tino, so that was taken care of. It's actually playing... It's having its Canadian premiere at Whistler, which is a festival, on the 4th.
Yep.
But it's, I believe it's opening sometime in Toronto in March. It's going to be at the downtown, at the LA downtown Independent.
Okay.
I think, starting the 6th of March.
Okay.
And we've been hearing from different towns in the Midwest that want it. And I think we're going to New York, and we'll see. For a documentary, it's quite a rollout, I think.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I assume you guys are going to try to make it to as many of these screenings as possible.
Well, we cannot go to all of it. No. We're doing a Skype interview for Whistler.
Okay.
And we've done that a couple of times, but we'll make it to Toronto, and we'll make it to New York.
Yeah, and I think sometime after March probably is when the VOD and iTunes will probably be out. Do we have any idea about that stuff?
I had said May 1st, but it may be June 1st. It won't be later than that.
Okay.
Wow.
And I wanted to ask Dick, as a young guy, before you start acting, you ended up iconic in a lot of horror films. And did you, as a young person, did you watch a lot of movies as a kid? Did you fall in love with the movies at an early age, but like horror films or Universal film?
I saw everything. I saw pictures, the romantic comedies and the adventures and the horror films. And I just love movies. I was a movie fan.
As an actor, were horror films more fun to make, or is there any difference really between the dramas and the?
There's no difference.
Yeah.
Acting is acting is acting, and you pay very little attention to what the rest of the story is about, and you concentrate on what your character is supposed to be doing. So once the mood is set, whether you're playing the romantic lead or something, or you're playing a monster from hell, you adjust to that.
Or opposite Arnie. I mean, you had that, and that Arnie had been in a couple things obviously already, but that must have been interesting because I guess at that point Arnold Schwarzenegger wasn't quite the name it was after Terminator, which is this giant thing. Was that different, or was the experience just the same as acting opposite anyone? I'm always curious.
Acting with Arnie is nice. If you can stand the smell of cigars.
That's funny.
Well, the film is wonderful.
Yeah.
We've all seen it, and
it's
obviously if you're in LA, try to catch it tonight, which is when this airs, Friday.
Awesome.
Definitely look out for it and make an effort to catch it if it's in your town, and then hopefully it'll be VOD May or June of next year. So,
part of it. We don't want to ruin all the stories. That's the thing. It's
There's
a movie full of
talk
really
about
great
everything.
anecdotes and stories and moments, and we want people to see it. And that's part of why you're here, but we also don't want to ruin all the highlights.
So we hope this enticed you.
Yes.
Exactly. And I haven't seen War of the Satellites, so I'm curious to see that one.
I'm going to try to
Check it
catch
out.
Demon Knight on Saturday. Kind of psyched. You guys know that's one of my favorite films, ever. So, yeah.
Are there any of your films, Dick, before you go, that people haven't, less popular, that you feel like there's an interesting performance in there that maybe people haven't really discovered yet because it's not by Joe Dante or, James Cameron?
Not really. I think most of my movie fans seem to have seen everything I've made.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of film.
Yeah.
Night of the Creeps, baby. Him and Tom Atkins.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a
good
great
one.
scene.
Good pairing right there.
And Matinee. I've always thought Matinee
Matinee's
was
wonderful.
one of Joe's most underrated movies. I mean, I just think it's a beautiful
Oh, yeah.
movie about love of cinema,
Yeah.
It's great. Yeah, so many. Okay, well, we don't want to. We don't want to bleed you dry.
Are you
going to
list them now? Let's
Yes.
list off all the
Yeah,
films.
I literally, there's only been 2 guests on the show so far that I actually had to print out their lexicon of films that they have done. And you are the second one. Who was our first? I made a big deal out of it. Was it Charlie Band?
Could have been.
Probably.
It was somebody else who had
And it's a long
literally
list.
hundreds of films.
phone
And
book.
this is 9 pages.
Though we
I
did
had to
have a
print
guest
out.
who didn't think you liked him. Do you remember that? This was your challenge.
Me?
No. Does anyone remember? We had one guest who wasn't sure who thought you didn't like him, and that was Chopping Mall. I remember Jim Warnowski.
Warnowski.
We asked Warnowski,
Oh,
and he was
God.
like, he loved you, and he was like, oh, I had Dick in the movie, but I'm pretty sure he didn't like me. I think he, and so, yeah. Well, so maybe there's some truth.
I don't think so.
We'll set
I
the
don't think
record
so.
straight. But no, I mean, I think that's a fun part. But
Yeah.
anyway, that's the only guest, I think, as far as any negatives. So that's
Yeah.
kind of fun.
Well, this is by far the most legendary actor that we have ever had on and probably will ever have on. So it's a great pleasure. Thanks to all 3 of you for coming on for a
Yes.
bit.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you
Yeah.
so
And we're
much.
excited for everyone to discover this movie because within it, you'll also discover lots of other movies, which is exciting too.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
my favorite
that's
thing about docs is you're seeing titles. They're like, oh, I never saw that one. I got to check that one out too.
Yeah, I mean, and you don't want to spoil everything,
Yeah.
but it's kind of hard not to sometimes.
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
And in terms of relationship counseling, it also works really well. Because one thing I learned, and I've always thought this, is that if you can't make the person you're with laugh, in bad situations, you just have no chance. Like that is the ultimate thing to take off pressure in a relationship. And I really love that about you guys as a couple. So congrats, 55 years is something.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All righty.
Thanks, guys.
We'll see you next week.
Thank you.